standpoint, if you're creating an original franchise, you want something that can live for decades.
I want to talk about one other kind of deal before we take some questions, and that is there have been a lot of acquisitions of development studios. Some people would call some of these acqui-hires. Can anyone on the panel kind of tell us the dynamics of an acqui-hire and kind of how the deals are structured, what the deals look like? Anybody?
I mean, we've talked about it a little bit. I mean, I'd be curious, you probably know from your client standpoint, and I don't know if you've acquired, but, I think depending on how much heat the studio has, it could be, 100, 200K a head. And, if you've got a team that, a company with lots of cash like Facebook or Google wants, they'll pay what it takes. They'll pay $1 million a head for someone, and that could be a genuine exit. But in most cases, it's they're looking at the cost of paying recruiting fees and the time of how long it takes to recruit people one by one versus getting a team that works together well already, knows their sort of how they project their work, and then it's some premium to that for speed, but it's not like an awesome exit for everyone usually.
Yeah, I mean, acquire is usually like, frankly, worst case scenario for a lot of developers, where they're just like, just cover our overhead and we'll do whatever you want. But we have seen just generally more acquisitions occur. Obviously, Microsoft sort of sparked this acquisition war early last year, and we're seeing it shake out across the industry. Because there is premium put on talent and content, and there's there is a increasingly smaller number of really talented developers creating great content. And if you're Microsoft and you have a platform, you want to feed that platform with lots of content. If you're Google and you're creating a platform, you probably want a lot of original content on there. If you're a Tencent, you want to make sure that you lock in as much great talent as you can when you can, especially when these types of shifts in the marketplace occur. So, I haven't seen this in my career over the last 15 years, where there's just this rush to acquisition or significant investment. So it's been a really interesting change.
Yeah, it's intense right now. And it hurts a little bit from my standpoint because we're not in the position of acquiring studios at the moment. But at GDC, this is the first GDC that I've seen that developers would just come in, like skipping and singing because there's so much money flowing their way right now. And it's really, this competition between Valve, Epic, Google, Microsoft, Sony for exclusives for their platform is definitely creating an arms race around really talented developers. And I think particularly in the console space, you're going to start to see a lot of these mid-sized indies that have been work for hire but have done really good games. They're going to get snatched up.
And I can speak to just really quickly
Sure.
in the public market. So a number of our companies that are esports and gaming companies on TSX Venture Exchange are doing a lot of acquisitions. So Axion Ventures out of Vancouver, they went public a couple of years ago. They have now done, I think, 3 acquisitions. Enthusiast Gaming Holdings out of Toronto, they just went public in October. They've already done 2 acquisitions. So again, these are small public companies, but they're adding value to their shareholder base and their market cap through acquisitions, again, acquiring talent and revenue.
The other one that's going on is Zynga, has done some really smart acquisitions in the last year or so, and they seem to have a model where they're releasing fewer games themselves, looking for the venture guys to fund the studio to birth something like an Empires and Puzzles, and then they'll come along and buy that game, plug it into their infrastructure, their capital, and help scale it up. But they're looking to buy a game, they're not looking to buy a team.
Okay, let's go to questions from the audience. Anybody out there? Right there.
Hi. Chris, you guys talked a lot about trust when it comes to expanding games to other media, whether it be TV or film. And I've worked on both sides, TV, film, and now gaming. And I just think it's a difficult hurdle to overcome, trusting, taking whichever medium it starts at and giving constraint. Jam City earlier talked about taking Harry Potter and having to play within those confines of the canon of the world. Is there a way to somehow break through that and be like, you know what, just make the idea as great as it can possibly be, and then we can see if we can franchise it beyond? Because I feel like just going at something with how do we make this a franchise, it's really hard to pull off. We saw that with what Warner Brothers unfortunately tried to do with Justice League. They tried to catch Marvel, and it's really difficult when I think when you start with that, let's franchise this before starting with that kernel.
You bring up a really good point, and we could do a whole panel just on that. But you know, I mean, you're right that I think a lot of the Hollywood studios have found that it is harder to do this universe world building from scratch than they originally thought. And if the world building piece or the franchising gets in the way of telling a good story, you're screwed. I think that, you know, if you look at DC, they're starting to find their way there, and so, you know, people are starting to find that balance over time. But it's certainly a lot. I having worked on pretty much all the biggest franchises of all time, I could look at an IP and in 5 minutes tell you if there's ever going to be a long-term, you know, licensing business or, you know, TV exploitation or film exploitation. There's just certain elements that you look for. You know, John brought some of them up, but you look for, you know, is there a story there? Is there a world there that's bigger than the story that people want to immerse themselves in? Are there identifiable characters? Are those characters differentiated from one another? Is there an aspirational fantasy? Because if there's nothing to aspire to, then why do I want to come and live in your world in the first place? It may be a really good story, but it may not be somewhere I want to come and live. So, you know, I think that as game studios get increasingly savvy about it, they'll figure out what elements they need to incorporate in the game to work outside the game.
We can take one more question.